everyone, and welcome back to the attic with me, Lou. Today I'm posing the question, who else has seen this movie? That's right, we're gonna get niche, folks. Just a little bit niche, not crazy niche, but you can still go ahead and call me Nisha Barton today because I have selected a few films that have been somewhat pivotal in my journey as both a film enthusiast and a human being. But typically when I mention these to people, 9 times out of 10 they've either never heard of them or they've seen the poster and that's about it. That is of course a generalization. There's going to be a bunch of people out there like, yeah, I've seen these. You ain't special. Well, no. But in here I am. And you can't take that away from me. If you're a good friend of mine, then I've probably shown you 1 or 2 of these already. But for everyone else, let's get the party started. Released in 1999, Go was the 3rd feature film to be directed by Doug Liman, his second being Swingers in 1996. And although it hasn't reached the same level of cult status, Go is one of those movies that if you're only just finding out about it now, you'll probably wonder how on earth it took you so long.
Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
I've often heard it referred to as a teenage pulp fiction, which is actually pretty accurate, not just because of the casual but not so casual pop culture filled dialogue style.
You some kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi motherfucker talking.
But because the film is split into 3 main chapters, each one focusing on an individual set of characters that are all somehow interconnected. First off, we have Ronna, the checkout girl, who's struggling to make rent and on the verge of being evicted just before Christmas. Whilst covering a shift for her drug-dealing buddy Simon, Ronna is approached by a couple of charming guys looking to score some ecstasy. Desperate for the cash, Ronna agrees to help them and formulates a sly plan to buy the drugs from Simon's dealer Todd so that she can sell them onto the guys at a higher price, keeping the extra money for herself.
You can't do that, can you? And go around Simon like that?
Okay, listen up. If Simon were here, which by the way he's not, he would charge 15 when I know he gets it for 10. Times 20 hits, that's about $100 I'd be pissing up my dick.
But it's an evolutionary leap. You're moving up the drug food chain without permission.
You shouldn't do this, Ronna.
When Ronna gets to the house though, the guys are joined by a slightly older gentleman and the 3 of them appear to be acting rather strangely. So in a panic, she flushes the pills down the toilet and gets the heck out of there. Now, completely out of pocket, Ronna has to retrieve her best friend Claire, who is currently being held collateral at Todd's apartment, deal with her other buddy Manny, who took 2 pills and is off his tits, and find a way to save herself from eviction, all the while hoping that Todd doesn't realise she's been hustling him. Story number 2, we follow Simon, the impulsive Brit on his lad's trip to Vegas, where he gets into all sorts of shenanigans, including crashing a wedding, having a threesome, stealing a car, getting into a fight with the owner of a strip club, and a big old car chase through the city. Just your standard Vegas nonsense, really. Simon is played by Grange Hill alum Desmond Askew.
Don't say nothing to anyone.
And he is equal parts lovable and infuriating.
I'll give you an extra 20 for a blowjob.
It is, however, Simon's buddies, Tiny, Sing, and Marcus, that I enjoy the most in this segment.
Whatever.
Whatever?
Whatever.
What you mean, whatever?
Now, why don't you pull your stinky dinky out my ass? I'm just trying to make conversation.
I mean, you've got Breckin Meyer, James Duval, and Taye Diggs all together in one banter-filled friendship unit.
Are you happy now?
Shut up, man.
Is your British ass happy now?
Story number 3, we return to the start again, this time following Zach and Adam, the guys from Ronna's story, who it turns out are actors from a TV soap opera and secretly a couple in real life. They are assisting police detective Burke on the entrapment of Simon after a drug-related indiscretion of their own, but after the bust goes awry, Burke agrees to still wipe their criminal slate clean on the condition that they attend an early Christmas dinner with him and his wife, Irene.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Now this dinner might be my favourite sequence of the whole movie because it gets increasingly uncomfortable as Irene, hilariously played by Jane Krakowski, flirts shamelessly with Adam in the kitchen and Burke gets way too comfortable around Zach in the bedroom.
I could do aerobics over here and you wouldn't feel it.
I bet I wouldn't.
So Zach, would you say you're open to new things?
And while it seems like they're headed towards a proposition to swing, It soon becomes apparent that they've actually been invited there to be enlisted as part of a multi-level marketing scheme.
You want us to sell Amway?
It's Confederated Products. It's a different company. It's a different quality of product.
After the dinner, the guys head to a warehouse rave, and I won't tell you anything that happens after that because I don't want to spoil the fun, but the acting from Scott Wolf and Jay Moore is incredible. And there's so many terrific performances in this movie. I could go on about William Fichtner for hours because he has this awkwardly intense kind of homoerotic thing going on. I quote this man all the time.
What does that smell like? CK1, right? Right? But it's not.
You've also got Timothy Oliphant, who is effortlessly cool and intimidating as Todd Gaines, the drug dealer. Nathan Bexton as Manny, an unfortunately overlooked actor who is so great in this movie. Sarah Polley as Ronna, who's friggin' awesome. She's got so much attitude and she presents herself as dry and fearless, but you can tell deep down she's struggling and she's terrified. It's impossible not to root for her. You've also got Katie Holmes and an incredibly short but particularly fabulous appearance from Melissa McCarthy.
So exciting!
It's an undeniably excellent lineup. All I've done is gush about the cast, but how can I not? I'm also a big fan of the soundtrack. The score is techno-fueled, but the needle drops are pop hit after pop hit. No Doubt made a song for this movie. Fatboy Slim gets played in this movie, and so does one of my all-time favorites, Steal My Sunshine by Len.
I was lying on the grass of Sunday morning.
You can judge me all you want for that. I simply don't care. Look, I haven't even scratched the surface of this movie. It's so fun. It's colourful, it's exciting, it's funny. It changed my life when I was a teenager. It's such a little time capsule. And if you haven't seen it, maybe you can add it to your Christmas watch list.
So, what are we doing for New Year's?
Oh my goodness, where to even start with Versus? So this one came out in 2000. So it's kind of vibing on the same frequency as Go. By that I'm mainly referring to the techno music and leather jackets. Otherwise they have very little in common. Directed by Ryuhei Kitamura, Versus is an action, horror, fantasy with a little bit of comedy, a little bit of romance, and a whole lot of blood and limbs flying around. It's incredibly low budget and there is some camera work that makes me feel a little bit travel sick, but that kind of adds to the gritty experience that this film provides because it's gnarly in all senses of the word. So according to this movie, there are 666 portals that connect our Earth to the other side. One of them is in Japan, in the Forest of Resurrection, where this little chestnut takes place. The main action follows a couple of escaped convicts who meet up with the Yakuza gang, led by an eccentric gentleman in a green shirt who is under the instructions of an unseen leader that will be joining them at a later point. One of the prisoners, played by Tak Sakaguchi, grows suspicious of these men when he sees that they've kidnapped a young woman and appear to be holding her hostage. An argument ensues, and he ends up shooting one of the gang members, only for them to return as a zombie. Wondering if this was a fluke or not, the guy in the green shirt shoots prisoner number 2 and, you guessed it, he also comes back as a zombie. Tak and the girl make a run for it, and the Yakuza guys decide to go against their instructions and track them down, but in a cruel twist of irony, they realize that they've bumped off a lot of people over the years, and guess where they buried all the bodies? That's right. Eventually, the aforementioned leader does show up, and he is bad to the bone. He's catching bullets, he's dodging bullets, he's surviving fatal wounds, ripping people's hearts out. I'll spare you that one. He's unstoppable. He's superhuman. He's a vampire? Like, he's basically, you could argue that this man is a vampire because there's a lot of blood consumption. And he turns people into other undead things that follow him around. This makes it sound way more like a horror movie. It's definitely more of an ultra-violent action film with a supernatural undertone. It's just 2 hours of people fighting each other in the most extreme of ways. There's fist fights, gunfights, martial arts, sword fights. There's a lot of blood spitting. I guess you could say there's something for everyone. Provided you're not too squeamish, that is. And yes, the gore is abundant and exaggerated, but it's not always massively convincing. The budget is dinky, so the effects are on the jankier side, but that's what makes it so entertaining. This film doesn't want you to take it seriously because it doesn't even take itself seriously. The tone ranges from light and charming 1 minute to extremely chaotic the next. And the assortment of characters is equally unpredictable. It's a small cast, but I love how varied the performances are, because you have the lead and the main villain who are very physical in their fight scenes, but also very calm and subdued and effortless with it. And then on the complete flip side of that, you have the guy in the green shirt who is just absolutely chewing up that scenery and making these huge, ridiculous choices, and I adore every second that he is on screen. He does later become a frog zombie thing, which is kind of weird. This film is wackadoo, man. Like, I feel you have to have a very specific taste level to enjoy this, so I'm definitely not recommending this for everyone. But just know, for as sloppy and as daft as this movie is, it still somehow manages to feel cool. Like if The Matrix and Evil Dead had a baby and it was raised by Quentin Tarantino and Takeshi Miike, it might look a little something like this. This 1974 road movie, written and directed by Wenders, is the first installment of what has come to be known as his Road trilogy, also comprised of Wrong Move and Kings of the Road. I'm ashamed to say I haven't watched either of these films yet, but I can confidently tell you that Alice in the Cities is a gorgeous depiction of an intergenerational friendship, and I just love it. Rüdiger Vogler plays Philip, a struggling journalist who is supposed to be writing about the American landscape, but suffering from a bad case of writer's block. Failing to present any complete work and running low on money, Philip has no choice but to return to his home in Munich.
Ich habe noch davon gelesen, aber ich habe nicht gedacht, dass es überhaupt kein Flugzeug nach Deutschland.
Aber ich muss halt zurückfliegen.
He befriends Lisa and her 9-year-old daughter Alice, who are also trying to get back to Germany, but unfortunately for all of them, none of the flights from New York are going there. The three of them decide to stick together and catch the same flight to Amsterdam the following day, sharing a hotel room that night. Lisa disappears before they wake up, leaving a note to say that she will meet Philip and Alice at the top of the Empire State Building, which of course she does not. When they return to the hotel, there is yet another note from Lisa, this time saying that she's going to stick around for a bit to resolve some issues with her ex, but will catch up with them in Amsterdam.
Fliegst du gerne? Ich mag das Essen gerne. Das ist so schön verpackt.
Alice and Philip take the flight together and explore the city, but Lisa never shows up. Alice mentions that her grandmother has a house somewhere in Germany, so Philip agrees to take her there. The trouble is, she doesn't remember her grandmother's name, let alone the town in which she lives, but assures Philip that she'll recognize it as soon as she sees it.
Alice, bitte, du musst doch wissen, wie deine Großmutter heißt. Nicht Van Damme.
So heiße ich. Oma heißt anders.
Together, they travel the country in search of a house and a person that may or may not exist, all the while growing closer and developing an incredibly endearing friendship. It's a very simple and slow-paced number with natural dialogue and beautiful chemistry, and the acting is wonderful, particularly Jelle Rotlander as Alice, because she has this angelic, youthful innocence that makes me want to protect her at all costs, but also this precocious side that reassures me she can handle herself. Even though Philip is acting as her guardian when they arrive in Amsterdam, for example, she appears to have some control of the situation because she can speak Dutch and he can't.
Ik begrijp het niet goed. Moet het alleen uitgedund worden?
Ik vind het al dun genoeg.
Zal ik hem ook die haren wassen en hem een fixon geven?
Dat lijkt me wel een goed idee.
Was hat er gesagt?
Nichts.
And as huge a deal as it might seem that this child has effectively been abandoned and left with a complete stranger, it's a surprisingly comfortable watch because both Philip and Alice remain very calm about this bizarre situation that they've been forced into. It's a lovely film in how trusting everyone is, including us, the audience. The way that Lisa just leaves her child with a man she barely knows, the way that he's willing to spend what little money he has to help Alice find her family, the way Alice just goes along with everything without kicking up a fuss. It shouldn't make sense, but it does, and that's all thanks to the flawless casting. The dynamic between Alice and Philip does feel timeless and familial, and they have a connection that is not only heartwarming to watch, but also feels incredibly authentic.
What did you do with the others? What of? Don't pretend you and your bloodthirsty crew didn't board the honest and sink it. Okay. Right now, there's a police critter searching for you.
And it's so nice to see the positive effect that the character of Alice has on Philip, because we see him at the start of the movie alone, staying in motels, driving around, disgruntled and jaded by the American dream, and then along comes this little girl that needs his help, and nothing else really matters other than that. It's almost like by focusing on someone else, he starts rediscovering himself. This unplanned journey provides the perfect distraction that he was looking for all along. He starts writing, he starts feeling inspired, and he makes a great friend along the way. And through Alice, we're reminded of what the world feels like to a younger person. It's huge and it's noisy, but there's something exciting about that. Timer is an underrated gem from 2009 that I've forced a lot of people to watch over the years. It's a romantic science fiction indie written and directed by Jac Schaeffer, and it stars Emma Caulfield of Buffy the Vampire Slayer fame, which is probably why I watched it in the first place. This one is also pretty low budget, so it does look a little bit made for television, but it's actually so great once you get past that. The premise is that there are these electronic devices called timers that people can have implanted into their wrists that will count down the years, months, hours, seconds it will take until they meet their one, aka a predetermined soulmate. The clock will only start counting down when both parties have installed their timers, otherwise it will remain blank. We follow Una, an organised and somewhat uptight orthodontist with a blank timer, who is so desperate to find out who her one is that she only dates men without timers and encourages them to get one just on the off chance that they are matched, regardless of how she actually feels about them. Needless to say, each one thus far has been a failure.
Scale 1 to 10. How sad are you about Brian?
6. 6.5. You know what, though? It's fine. It's not even about Brian. I just want to know, you know? Even if it says I'm not going to meet him until I'm, 43?
She lives with her nonchalant stepsister, Steph, whose timer has started counting down, but has another 15 or so years left to go. In the meantime, Steph finds herself engaging in plenty of meaningless sex and short-term relationships to avoid getting too attached to anyone. Taking a leaf from Steph's book, Una starts a casual relationship with a cashier called Mikey, even though he fundamentally goes against everything that she's looking for in a partner.
So what do you do?
Orthodontist?
Oh, far out, like a dentist?
Yeah. Only an orthodontist.
Cool.
He's young, he's naive, he's in a band with his roommates, and he has a timer with 4 months counting down. What could possibly go wrong? Well, inevitably their feelings begin to grow and they start falling in love with each other, regardless of how mismatched they might seem. Meanwhile, Steph has been developing some feelings of her own for a guy named Dan. She knows he's not her one because he claims that his one was his wife, who passed away, and he didn't need a device to prove that. Can there be more than one though? Is the timer the only true option, or can we decide for ourselves?
Do you think the timer actually works, or is it just a self-fulfilling prophecy? The chicken, the egg, it's all a big clusterfuck.
I adore this movie for the fact that it really does challenge the idea of what love is and why we seek it out. And it resonates particularly well in this current digital age where computers are helping people decide who they're going to date and potentially fall in love with. The place where Una goes to get her boyfriend's timers installed looks uncannily similar to an Apple store or equivalent, and that was probably quite high concept when it came out, but doesn't seem all that far-fetched today.
It's all right here for you, and I am so sure he's going to be everything that you dreamed of.
And there are definitely parallels that can be drawn between the dating apps of our world and the timer system in this world. Una's desperation to find her match starts out as something incredibly clinical and disappointing, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And yet the organic feelings that she develops whilst dating Mikey, who is not her match, are way more exciting and romantic and probably closer to what she's been striving for. John Patrick Amadori is friggin' adorable as Mikey too. Like, I turn into a 13-year-old during the scene when Una walks into the bar and his band are playing and he notices her. See, I'm not dead inside, but gosh do I like to pretend to be. And that's why I love Michelle Borth as Steph, because she is so skeptical and resentful of the timer system because she hasn't got the results that she wants.
It's better to know earlier
than later. Dick.
So she makes herself completely emotionally unavailable and builds up this huge wall to avoid letting anyone in.
Steph, baby, don't make me come after you in your life.
Sorry.
She pretends she's tough as nails, but she's just protecting herself, and she provides a necessary juxtaposing outlook to that of Una's. Now, Una and Steph are stepsisters, but oddly enough, they share the same birthday. So even though they are chalk and cheese and lead incredibly contrasting lifestyles, they are intrinsically connected to each other.
How perfect is our family?
Perfecto.
And don't you two feel like you were meant to be sisters?
Yes.
And their love story is the most important and the most genuine of the movie. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that hasn't seen this, but there are some twists and turns, and some of the characters make some infuriating choices, and others get dealt a really shitty hand. So it fills my heart, and it breaks it all in one, and maybe that's why I keep coming back for more. I also love Jo Beth Williams as the highly strung but lovable mother, and Desmond Harrington is lovely as Dan. I really like the cast in this. I feel like many people wouldn't give it a chance because, as I mentioned, it looks a little bit like a TV movie. But I'm an independent filmmaker, so I'm pretty forgiving, so that doesn't bother me too much. Plus, I'm generally more invested in characters than visuals, so from that perspective, I would recommend this for anyone that's looking for an alternative approach to the romance genre, or for anyone that's just looking for a little indie flick.
Believe me when I tell you, this is your one shot. So make it count.
Now, I get off now. Nelson! Hey, dude, cover for me.
Not cool, bro.
So there you go. 4 movies that have been quite a big deal for me that aren't massively mainstream. And I avoided so many spoilers just in case you haven't seen them. Let me know if you have. If you haven't, I do hope I've convinced someone out there to watch at least one of these films today. I'll be surprised if it's Versus, but I wouldn't hold it against you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please do be sure to show your support by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. But until then, be safe, be sexy, happy holidays, and thank you for your time.
Bitch, look at your shirt. This ain't Hawaii.